All right. Well, continuing sort of the conversation that we did last week about digestive diseases and making sure people of all kinds of disability have the right healthcare coverage. Well, my next guest is someone who is kicking ass with congenital muscular dystrophy, Hollis Peirce, a Podmatch connection. Thanks for joining me today, Hollis.
Thanks for having me, Alex.
So tell us your story. You're on Podmatch, but more importantly, I see you got a master's degree. You're really out there in the world. Tell us your story, though, for those who may not know about you on the One Leg Up Network today.
Yeah, well, as you said, I have a master's degree, of congenital muscular dystrophy, which is a more lesser known form of muscular dystrophy, and mine has been present since birth. I was diagnosed at 6 months old. I've never walked a day in my life, but I still, as you say, I have achieved many things, such as earned myself a master's degree in history at Carleton University, and now I'm a podcaster and public speaker on top of it.
So I see you're Canadian, and I'm kind of curious to know how the Canadian advocacy works compared to the U.S. I mean, it's got to be a kind of different system the way you can get bills passed to help those disabilities in Canada than the U.S., or is it pretty similar?
I mean, it's similar in some ways, and it's different in others. For instance, you in the United States, disabled individuals have Medicaid to help them pay for bills. And here in Ontario, I live in Ottawa, Ontario, the capital city of Canada.
Nothing big there. Just happened to have an election, just yesterday be decided, right?
Yeah, actually, I'm a member of the Liberal Party, and I was at their convention last night. And our new leader and new prime minister was elected, and
And Matt Carney, off the off topic here a little bit, but he seems to be sort of what more politicians are, which are businessmen, right? So he's coming in with that banking background. So it's very interesting. He's not your average politician, it seems like, right?
no, but I mean, in a number of ways, a lot of politicians here do come from other backgrounds, and we feel that Mark Carney is going to be a good leader because he has experience in the private sector as well as now the public sector, and so he can guide the country past and through these rough economic times. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
But
a little wild what's going on between our countries. But, I'm very intrigued because you got your master's degree in history, and my mom just got her master's in public history last year. So I feel like
oh wow.
a connection here. But tell us about schooling, if you don't mind, with congenital muscular dystrophy from, when you can remember to now. Has it been very accommodating to you over the years, up until getting your master's?
You know what, Alex, that's accommodations with me have I've sort of had to be a driving force in my early years. For instance, in one of my elementary schools, they wanted to accept my sister, but they didn't want to accept me because they didn't want to hire an educational assistant to help me take notes and things like that, go to the bathroom, things like that. And so instead of just saying, okay, we'll try another school, my mom was like, no, you're going to take him, and I'm going to be his assistant until you hire him as an assistant. And so my mom has often been a mama bear type
Sure. Well, my
character.
mom and I just were in DC doing advocacy work on behalf of those digestive diseases. So my mom, they call her the encyclopedia of my health. Like from the day I was born to now, she's really been the one always by my side. And my dad too, but my mom's been in the operating room. She's been there, So I think we can have that commonality. Our moms are very involved with our health, and they need to be.
Absolutely. Moms are the best. Yeah.
All right, I want to ask you about advocacy because here in the States, we're about to have a funding situation where we might have a government shutdown again, right? And that impacts people with disabilities. And I want to know from your perspective up there in Ottawa and in Canada, when there's a government shutdown possibility, are the funds as affected as they are in the United States?
No, they're not as affected here. Because healthcare here is uh a public thing, and we have free healthcare essentially. It's always available. And what is more difficult is here in Ontario, because healthcare here is mainly rooted in a provincial sector. And so Ontario has what they call.
That's true. Canada is made up of provinces, not so much the states. You guys are all province based, right?
Exactly, exactly. And health and education are ran by the provinces. And so in Ontario, we have what's called the Ontario Disability Support Program. And so they assist you in helping you to pay for major medical equipment, such as your wheelchair. Like, for instance, they pay for 75% of my electric chair every 5 years. But the issue is that, for instance, I have a chair that uses hydraulics to tilt back and forth. But when you have that complex of a chair, they say, okay, well, we'll pay for it, but you need to get it from this specific vendor.
Uh,
And
okay.
and when that specific vendor has to deal with so many different people, it causes wait times to be forever, and it takes probably close to a year and a half to 2 years to finally fit a new chair.
You're doing advocacy work, right? And I found I'm sort of in the middle here. Maybe you are too. You want to do advocacy work for those generations after you and just anybody in the community. But then selfishly, we can help you too. I guess there's a benefit to that, right? But I feel like we both come at it as, hey, we want to take our experiences and share it to make other lives better. And if we get help too, even better, right? But our main focus is others.
Yes, absolutely, Alex. I completely agree. And like every year, I do the walk for muscular dystrophy, and I've been their ambassador before. And I find that they are a fantastic charity that benefits those with muscular dystrophy. And also, right now, I'm living in a complex care unit of a hospital, a long-term complex care. And I participate in many professional committees here, and I serve as a patient representative because I feel that the patients need to have their perspective heard and understood by the professionals here that are running the hospital.
All right, I got to ask you this because I see you were just awarded the Meritorious Service Medal Award winner. And because you're so humble, you wouldn't think that because we haven't touched on that yet. But here you are. You are a winner of this award. What was that like to be recognized for, I guess, at that point, your 35, 36 years of service, in the community, if you will?
Yeah, it was Alex, it was quite surprising. Absolutely. I received a phone call um one morning during a physiotherapy appointment, and I sort of said, "Can I get you to call me back later today?" And they're like, Absolutely. It's great news. And I had no idea what they were talking about. And so when they told me, I was flabbergasted. You know, I've done some things to help my community, but it was never in hopes of being recognized on a grand scale like this. I am so humbled by this. I am so honored to receive this type of award, but I never asked for this type of recognition.
All right. Well, we've gone a little fast here in the onset, so let's take it back a little bit. Tell us about your childhood and what life was like, and how you were able to. And I know we hate that term, as people overcome, like how you're able to, push through is my term because I like to say I pushed through this. How are you able to push through all these challenges when you were younger, and did you have a great support system?
Absolutely. I absolutely had a great support system. I grew up in a loving family, and you know, in my childhood, as I said to you earlier, you know, education was a bit of a challenge with schools not wanting me sometimes,
Mm.
and also, you know, a common cold for me with my disability, it would take me a month or two to recover from, rather than just a week or two. So I missed, you know, when I was in high school, I was not in attendance about 50% of the time, but I still managed to be on the honor roll because I still managed to, I wanted to stay where I
And
was.
for those who may not know, back then they didn't have the smart technology where you could literally do your work from home, so that had to be a bit of a challenge, right?
It was a great challenge, absolutely. And, you know, doing homework was a very physically draining process for
Mm.
me. And it probably, you know, doing my work at home probably kept me from saving energy and getting through the illnesses and surgeries more than just keeping up with school. But I wanted to keep up with school because I knew I wanted to succeed and I wanted to go to university, and I was successful in doing so. And I managed to get to university. I still faced a bit of challenges. I was put on academic uh academic warning at one point, but it wasn't because of my poor grades. It was because I had not received the textbooks in a correct format for me to read.
Well,
And so I would be weeks behind in the readings. And so I finally found a way to get through that, and that got
were
me
you in a public school setting or a private school setting,
at that
Hollis?
time.
At that time, yes.
You, I was at the university level at
Oh,
that.
at the university level. Yeah, yes, yes, of course.
Yeah, yeah, I was doing my undergrad, and
And by the way, colleges are very, I don't want to say the word stingy when it comes to accommodations, but they're very tough sometimes. I've heard stories.
they are, they are. I was fortunate enough that I lived in a city where the most accessible university in the country is, and that is primarily based on physical accessibility, because all of its buildings are linked together through an underground tunnel system.
Mm.
And so you'll see students who live on campus in pajama pants in their classes because they haven't been outside in months.
I'm,
And
I'm going to ask you about the accessibility from growing up to now. And as part of your work about making sure not only Ottawa, but all the provinces are accessible, like have you seen Ottawa change over the years?
yeah, absolutely. Like a friend of mine is one of the main supporters of a group called Stopgap, and they are a wonderful group that builds little one-step ramps so that all those buildings that are that this little one step into the store become accessible. Yeah, absolutely. And um
And
in
what's the geography like? Because obviously here it's all kind of hilly at times, and there are some buildings that are just still not accessible in 2025. And I feel like that's why you started the podcast about 21st century disability, because here in the 21st century, there are still places that have steps only or that don't have elevator. It must drive you crazy, Hollis.
oh, it does. It absolutely does. And my master's degree, I did I my thesis was all about academic accessibility in the post-secondary level. And so what I did was I took a case study of Carleton and I did a full physical accessibility audit of the entire campus. And I was able to do that a bit more successfully because I had experience with it earlier on because I had been hired by Blues Fest, which is a music festival here, as well as the Ottawa Folk Festival, to do physical audits of the festivals and report back to them and give them reviews on how disabled individuals are finding the accessibility in their festivals. And so
That's so cool.
I know,
Uh,
and so what I did was I sort of told them, well, I mean, I can tell you in terms of its accessibility for me, but if you really want a full-fledged uh, vision of the accessibility, you need to help me hire a team of
mhm.
differently disabled individuals who can all report back to me their experiences, and then I can make a full report to you. And that's exactly what we did. We did what we called was the A team. So we had deaf individuals, we had individuals with who were hard of hearing, we had autistic individuals, and yeah.
What was your when you're growing up? It sounds like you're a very social guy, right? You're doing these different things. Was it easy to be sociable when you were a kid, and did you find that you were able to fit in with? I don't want to say the regular kids, but yeah, the regular kid. Were you able to fit in?
Yeah, you know what, Alex, at times I felt like I was, at times I felt challenged. Because of physical limitations, I couldn't go to a lot of my friends' birthday parties. And I couldn't and also, my family moved around a lot. So I didn't have any long-term friends throughout grade school because I found like if I had grown up in the same city, I would have probably developed more serious friendships early on and then have them get to know me and and be my friend throughout my uh my childhood. But so that was a bit of a disadvantage. But in many ways, I wouldn't have changed my experiences either way. So I did experience a bit of bullying, absolutely. Yeah,
I want to know about getting your first power chair, because I'm sure that was fun. You're a little kid, get your first chair, and it probably changed your life because you went from manual to power, and boy, that's independence right there.
yeah, absolutely. My mom and I still to this day always talk about the time that I left the room without her for the first time. And it was a scary thing for the both of us. And I remember, I used to always pretend I was Batman. He was my favorite superhero. And so I started when I was in my new electric chair, I would go running around the house pretending I was Batman. But then I would get into the darkened dining room and I'd be scared because I'd be alone and I'd never been alone, without my mom. And so by the time I made it back to the kitchen, I actually asked her, "Mom, is the Joker chasing me?" Like, because I was seriously terrified. But
Oh my God.
yeah, that was just how powerful my imagination was at the time.
Well, you didn't get to become an award, a medal of, a medal award winner, or you've been honored throughout Canada over the years. Actually, I'm reading here in 2008, you got the Ottawa Celebration of People Award. You wouldn't be able to do all that without the great support system of like teachers, and I'm sure I want to ask you about speech because the trach obviously is part of your life, but talk about the speech aspect of things if you don't mind.
Absolutely, absolutely. You're right. I love to talk. And my sister can't stand my stories because they would go on and on and on. Yeah, and actually having a trach is quite a recent thing for me. I only got it back in 2001. And and so for a long time in my early months of having it, I didn't think that I would ever talk again. And then the respiratory therapist sort of told me that I would, and I was amazed. And so now I still love to give guest lectures because, like, when I was in my graduate degree, I had the opportunity to give a couple of guest lectures, and I absolutely loved it.
That's
Absolutely
so
loved it.
cool.
And because that was always my dream was to be a professor in university.
Well,
But
I had tubes down my throat when I was a little baby, and I feel like seeing those images inspired me to have a voice. And I feel like through these podcasts, we're finding our voice even more now. But
absolutely, absolutely. And I think that was exactly it, right? Like, I as soon as I got my voice back, I wanted to advocate even more and make my voice heard. And as you say, podcasting has been an amazing way for the two of us to do that.
have you found this podcast to open doors for you? This 21st century disability, like, do you get to cover events through your podcast?
Absolutely,
Tell
absolutely.
us any fun events you've been able to cover through the podcast.
Pardon?
Tell us some fun events you've been able to cover on your show.
Oh, well, I mean, one time, because I only began my podcast in 2023, but I had it was already getting going for about a year, and I sort of I asked the Muscular Dystrophy Association if I could have a live episode at their annual walk, and I did that last year. It went great. They welcomed me with open arms, and I am really looking forward to what comes next.
I'm glad you mentioned MDA because I had been privileged to go to the telethon in Secaucus, New Jersey, when Jerry Lewis used to do it.
Oh
And I don't
yeah.
know if you guys were able to see that up in Canada when it was on, but Jerry Lewis, what a advocate for those with MDA.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, Jerry Lewis was definitely wanted to make muscular dystrophy well known, and his efforts went a great deal
Yeah,
for us.
they raised millions of dollars for those with MDA. It was pretty amazing.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, I got to ask you this because my friend, longtime friend from kindergarten, actually passed at the age of 22. She just got her high school degree. She was with us, but she'd been sick for a while. Her name was Hillary Bernstein. She passed from MDA at a very early age, 23.
Hmm.
But are there medical advances now that are extending lifespans of MDA? Those with MDA?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, Alex, I'm sorry for your loss. I myself have lost a number of friends because when I was a kid, I had a support group of about 14 boys, and we all had MD, and we all went to camp together. And now there's still only a few of us around. So I absolutely can empathize with your loss. But absolutely, there is all kinds of different technologies that are now like advancing our lifespan. For instance, my best friend before he passed away, he had a heart he had a Oh, the word is escaping me right now, but he had a mechanism put into his heart to
Oh.
keep it.
Almost like a pacemaker, right? Or
Yes,
something.
that's it, a pacemaker. Yeah, he had a pacemaker put in, and had I not been alive in the 21st century, I wouldn't have been able to breathe right now in my late 30s as I am right now, had it not been for this trait. Um,
Your
and
love, by the way, your love of history has led you to this podcast, I believe. So, have you been studying the way people with disabilities have been, dare I say, treated over the centuries here?
Absolutely. In my graduate degree, I TA'd for a class called Madness in Modern Times. And what it was about, the class itself was about how mental health um, was treated in the late 18th and early 19th century. And so I definitely found that fascinating, and I think that was a major influence on making me interested in advancing even further in the history study and starting a podcast related to history and disability.
In your studies, did you ever come across a man named Dr. Henry Viscardi? He was a champion here on Long Island for those kids with disabilities and also veterans of World War II that came back disabled. He helped create a resource center for them to get jobs when they came back from war. I don't know if you've ever crossed paths with that name in your studies, but
No, no, I hadn't. That's fascinating.
so right now they have hundreds of kids K through 12 with multiple kinds of disabilities. And I was a proud graduate there, so I'll send you info on that because I'd love you to maybe do a report on that too for your Canadian friends who may not know.
Yeah, please do. Please do. I look forward to reading.
And that leads me to my next question. You say you've been speaking across Canada. Did you ever come across the border to speak in the United States?
That I have not yet. No, no.
And have you been to the U.S.? Like, is traveling difficult for you?
You know what? As a young kid and in my teens, I traveled to the United States every year. Every year. It was my family's vacation spots were in the United States. We always generally speaking, we went to a major city that had a Major League Baseball team because I'm a huge baseball fan, and so we would go to a baseball game one week, and then the next week we would go to a beach somewhere.
And did
And
you find it amazing the differences between accessibility in Canada versus the US? Did you notice that at a young age?
absolutely I did, yeah. And for a long time, I found the U.S. to be way more physically accessible, thanks to things like the ADA, for
Right.
instance. And also, you guys have had a disabled president of the United States.
Yes, who didn't want to be known as that, so he covered himself in a coat. That's true, FDR. Um,
Exactly.
and
But in reality, that was at a time when disability was shown and considered to be a weakness.
all right, well, you mentioned the ADA, so I've got to ask this: does Canada have a broad standing, countrywide law like that.
They do not. We do not. We
And
are
is that part of your advocacy to get something like that established in Canada?
absolutely, absolutely, and but again, because healthcare is more a provincial thing, um, different provinces are sort of aiming to have their different laws passed that are similar to the ADA. And a lot of, for instance, the Canadian government mandated that all of the governmental buildings be accessible by 2025, and they have achieved that goal to a certain extent. Um, and then in Ontario, they also wanted a number of more things to be accessible by 2025. But you know how original goals are constantly pushed
Yeah,
back
sure.
as yeah. So
Would you say Ottawa, and I'm not sure of the Constitution equivalent up there, but are there amendments? Are there kind of laws that do help? I mean, you mentioned that a little while ago, but go into that a little more if you don't mind.
yeah, well, Ottawa is a very tricky place because it is in Ontario, and it is the capital city of Canada. Um, and in addition, it is right along the border to another province. Like right now, I am looking out my window and I can see Quebec over there across the other side of the river. So you constantly have different we've got three levels of police in the city. We've got the municipal police, we've got the provincial police, and we've got the RCMP, or the national police. And then we've got different levels of transportation. So we've got Ottawa city buses, and then we've also got Gatineau city buses that come across into Ottawa. Um,
I
that
gotta ask you this. This is fascinating because I'm feeling like we're hearing the different dynamic of the states versus and Canada. I have a couple things about current events as well before I wrap up. But Canadians are generally known as the nice guys in North Carolina. You're all very friendly and all that. But when it comes to the disabled community, does that friendliness reflect on the disabled community, or do you find that sometimes you get the sneers and the snickers? Like, do you find any of that?
Yeah, you know what? Ableism is a real thing, Alex. And there is definitely, even though you're right, we are a very polite, very politically correct country, and we are known to say sorry a lot. But we definitely still have our pitfalls when it comes to uh aiding those with disability, or seeing people with disability on an even level. And as an adult with a disability, I sort of my primary way of getting past ableism is to uh just to confront it head on. So like,
Mm-hmm.
when you're with somebody else that's not disabled, and uh you're coming up to a table to register for an event, for instance, like I did yesterday. um, I had my attendant with me, who was a fully able-bodied, not disabled man, and myself. And so what I would do is I go up to the table and I just start talking. And I just start talking, hey, my name's so and so. I'm here to register for this event. Here is my ticket.
True, because a lot of people would look at your age and say, "Well, what are you speaking on his behalf?" Type of thing.
Exactly. Exactly. They talk to him for me instead of me.
And
Yeah.
that,
And
my fiance is in a power wheelchair, so she's very vocal about what she needs, which is great, and
yeah.
it makes my life less uncomfortable because I'm not like, well, turn to her, you know what I mean? So there is that benefit to having being able to be talkative, and that's the other thing. I think you're inspiring other people with disability, and I know we hate the word inspiring, but in this context, what I'm saying is you're probably helping disabled people have a voice up there that may not have that, may not break out of their shell, but here you are saying, yes, you can break out of that shell.
Absolutely, yeah, and I love seeing new individuals who are breaking out of their own shell. And for instance, I play power hockey
I was
once.
going to say, you're an adaptive athlete. Talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, well, I started playing power hockey back when I was living in Calgary as a kid, and then I came to Ottawa, and Ottawa didn't have a league that was made, so after about a decade or so trying, I got a group of my friends together and we made our own league. And so now we play power hockey, and it is a way of playing hockey in a power wheelchair. It's not on ice. It's ball hockey in a gym, and as hard as it is to comprehend, it is a full contact sport in many ways.
Well, here at Viscardi, we would play, and they'd attach the stick to the chair, and then the chairs would collide at times. So I'm used to that, and it was fun.
Yeah.
And they would use a wiffle ball or an actual rubber puck, one or the other. So it was
Yeah, we
fun.
did wiffle ball as well.
Well, one of the famous Islanders, Radek Martinek, came to our school for an alumni event, and seeing him navigate in the chair, as you know, he's a prolific player. So to see him have to adapt to playing in the chair was very interesting. Seeing these guys have to do that and have that experience is quite interesting to get their feedback on it because it's not easy. I mean, it looks easy because you guys are very skilled, but it's not easy. I mean,
Exactly. But then again, if I was able bodied, I would have had to spend years and years learning how to skate at that level too, right? So it goes both the same ways.
I gotta ask you this. We are in And I was going to ask you about trans-able people that want to chop off a limb to become disabled. I don't know if you cover any of that on your podcast or not, but I
Yeah.
find that movement kind of disturbing. But anyway, the trade wars, are they affecting medical supplies in Canada right now? Have you noticed that?
Yeah, absolutely they are. Absolutely they are. For instance, I don't know if you can, yeah, I'm pretty sure you can see my neck right now. My vent going in my neck has a little turquoise thing inside my tube, inside right before my neck, and that is what's called a speaking valve. And so it lets air in, but it doesn't let air out. So
Okay.
when I breathe out, it forces the air to go up and past my vocal cords. So it allows me to talk. And these little valves are made in the United States, and they no longer ship to Canada. And so there is a respiratory therapist here in Ottawa that is now starting to make his own version of them. And I was fortunate enough to um be his guinea pig, if I, yeah, in quotations. Yeah. And so we are experiencing a bit of difficulty with those things, but we are finding different ways of getting over it.
Did you find Trudeau to be an inclusive PM, or will Matt Carney listen to the disabled community more? Do you think?
I think Trudeau was a very inclusive PM. But I think the future is always better. Uh, as the future, advances more and more, different things become more well known, and so I think Mark Carney will bring about even greater change as well.
Or I've got a couple stories for you because my dad took me up to, you mentioned baseball, took me up to the north to Toronto for the first ever World Series game played outside the states when the Blue Jays played the Braves in
Oh yeah.
'92. I was about 1 year old, and I had
Okay.
all the suctioning and everything. But he took me across the border to watch the game, and then in Ottawa when they had the World Cup in '96, I was there. And I don't know if you remember this, but they used to have this blindfolded guy trying to chase the bag of money on the ice at intermission. That
Yeah.
freaked me out. So I saw it in Montreal. I saw this guy in Montreal. I freaked out. In Ottawa, I'm on the counter at the beverage, refreshment stand. What do I see on the screen? The guy in the blindfold, and I'm freaking out in Ottawa. But I would love to get back up there. I love your jersey. I love the team's jersey up there, the Senators. But the fact
Yeah.
that you're more baseball is more interesting, because hockey is the sport up there. So I had to become baseball.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Like, I mean, I just find baseball to be a magical sport. It's I find that hockey and football and basketball, those type of sports, uh at the end of the game, it is the big guy who is responsible for scoring the goals, being on the ice, and things like that. But I find baseball is where the true magic happens when the unexpected happens.
And
And
Ottawa is more Toronto. They're obviously rooting for the Blue Jays, right? Because it's all in the same province there, or what?
It's in the same province. I personally despise the Blue Jays. I hate all Toronto teams. So, but it's mainly that is from the impact that I have never lived in Toronto, and Toronto sort of claims to be the capital of Canada because of all of its population and money. And the city of Toronto is a fantastic city, but I just don't appreciate its sports teams. So I've always been a New York Mets fan.
No way. I'm talking to a New York Met fan in Ottawa.
Yeah.
What? And Soto. By the way, the Mets look in better shape than the Yanks right now. I hate to say that.
Absolutely, yeah. And I was just like you were in the final of the World Series in Toronto in '92. I had the opportunity to go to the deciding game of the World Series back in 2001 when it was between the Mets and Yankees.
25 years ago in 2000.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, in
so you were
2000.
at Shea Stadium that night.
I was at Shea Stadium that night. Absolutely.
That's pretty special. Well, there's a lot I can unpack about my baseball history, but I wanted to focus on you because what you're doing as an advocate, as an ambassador, and as a podcaster, wrapped all in one. I feel like you're doing great work, and you'll continue to. And I was going to say this: what is what is your goal for the future? You're 36 now, so what's the next steps for you? How are you going to grow this podcast? Do you have any exciting guests you're welcoming on?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a few guests lined up in the future. A friend of mine is a very well-known disability advocate named Andrew Gerza. He's my next lined up guest, and that episode should be released on Thursday, I'm hoping. But from then on, I'm actually like you said, Podmatch is an amazing thing. So I've managed to meet some amazing people like yourself through Podmatch, and I've been able to be a guest on different podcasts because of it, and I've also been meeting some amazing people to be on my podcast.
Well, maybe we'll collaborate on yours too. I'd love to jump on and talk with you about 20%. Love the concept. One last thing though,
Absolutely.
I feel like you are not you're unique, but you're also a little more outgoing than some in the community. We talked about this earlier, but what I'm trying to say is you don't let yourself stay in that disability box. You say, let's expand from that. Let's go out and be amongst the able-bodied people. And I feel like that message has to be heard and told more. That we should all be cohabitive, not all in our different spaces or different boxes.
Absolutely. Well, and you know what, Alex, like for a long time as a kid, I was very timid and scared to talk to people. But you know what? As I've grown, and that sort of timidness was even with me in my university years. But now that I'm an adult, I sort of realize, you know what? Like everybody is different in so many ways that we together we can make a beautiful mosaic. Uh
Absolutely.
and also eventually everybody in this planet is going to be disabled, whether it is for a temporary time or whether it's suddenly by age or something like that. And that's the one thing people always forget about is as a minority, disability is always the most forgotten, but it is the only minority that every single person on this planet will be a member of at one point in time in their lifespan.
And I always say I started the Adapting with Alex Garrett feature of the One Leg Up Network because every minute, every hour, someone could become paralyzed. It's just this is reality. People have to adapt to becoming disabled. I wanted a platform where I could bring on folks like you, say, no, it's okay. You got
Yeah.
this. Just keep going, right?
Yeah, no, and I sort of share that same message, right? I always say that my 21st century disability is a part of what I call Thrive Productions, and because when I was diagnosed as a kid, my parents were told that I would have an inability to thrive, and so I've always said, you know what, no matter who you are or what your situation is, you can thrive in any way. And, thriving for some people might be considered not so, not, might be at a different level than other people, but
Amen.
anybody can thrive in their own way.
I love that. Well, Hollis, I can go on for hours, but I want this to be an introductory show, and then we'll have you on as, even through these tough times that we're dealing with as countries. I want people to know that the Canadians and Americans do love each other no matter what the trade war says, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right, Hollis, thanks for joining me, and good luck with everything up there, and we'll have you back on. Maybe toward our ADA, I'd love to get you back on.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alex. And it's been a pleasure to be a guest on your podcast and keep doing what you're doing.
Same to you. And this interview was powered by Podmatch. Thanks to them for connecting Hollis, Peirce, and I. And what's the website, by the way?
My website is www.21stcentury.com and it's 21stcentury.com.
I wonder if people think about podcasting accessibility, right? Because sometimes we love the visual so much, but we forget about the audio because some may not be able to see or, something like that. So it's always good to get the wording out there also.
Exactly, exactly. And Podmatch is definitely helping us do all of that.
Amen. Well, thanks so much, Hollis, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, thanks, Alex.